Hey everyone, Mr. W here. Today's lesson is on rounding numbers to the nearest decimal or whole number. We'll be working with numbers like this today, 7 and 648 thousandths. This is an example of something called a mixed number. A mixed number is when you have a combination of whole numbers and decimal numbers put together. The decimal point that you see in the middle has the job of separating the whole numbers on the left side, like the 7, and the decimal numbers, like the decimal point 648, on the right side. Decimal numbers are really just fractions. So the 648 there that you see is the fraction 648 thousandths, but it's expressed in decimal form. So what is rounding? You might remember that rounding is when we take our original number and make a second number that is just close to the first number. Today's challenge will be that we will sometimes be rounding to whole numbers on the left side of the decimal point and also sometimes to the decimal numbers on the right side of the decimal point. Okay. So our first step in rounding mixed numbers or decimal numbers is we need to know our place value. So for example, let's just start with tenths for our number of 7 and 648 thousandths. Our first step is to underline the place value that we want to round to. The second step is to box that digit and the digit to the right, so in this case the 64. Our third step is to take that 64 in the box and round it. 64 is in between 60 and 70, but it's closer to the 60. I'll show that again on a number line. We'll find 64. And it's in between the tens of 60 and 70 to the left and right, but it's closer to 60. So the 64 rounds to 60. Then our next step is rules for left and right. On the left side, we have the 7 and the decimal point. That stays exactly the same. On the right side, we have the 8. That pops into a 0. Now this is where it's a little bit different from other rounding lessons. We have one more step that we need to eliminate the extra zeros. So I'll say that again. Eliminate the extra zeros. And one more time, we're going to eliminate the extra zeros. That's how this lesson today is a little bit different from other rounding lessons. So those 2 zeros that you see there are the ones that we're going to remove. Now, how do we know which ones? Remember, we had to round this to the tenths. So anything that comes after the tenths, we're going to get rid of. So our answer is going to be 7 and 6 tenths. The reason why we can do that is that the decimal point 600 and the decimal point 6, those are equivalent decimals or equivalent fractions. We really could do a whole lesson on that, but do your best just to realize that we are allowed to remove those zeros today, and they can only be done for decimals. Okay, our answer would then read 7 and 648 thousandths rounded to the nearest tenth equals 7 and 6 tenths. Our lesson today, we will talk a little bit about place value. We'll review the steps again, and then we'll solve 3 problems. Okay, so 7 and 648 thousandths is in the decimals and whole numbers place value. So if we put that on a place value chart, remember that the ones place value is like the launch pad for whole numbers and decimals. For whole numbers, you start at the ones and work left, going up in value. For decimals, we also start with ones, but we go the opposite direction. We go smaller, or we go to the right side. So keep that in mind. So let's start with our decimals, and let's start with the 6. The 6 is in the tenths place value. The 4 is in the hundredths place value, and the 8 is in the thousandths place value. Those 3 make up the decimal place values. The whole numbers are made up of the 7 being in the ones place value. Then we also have the tens and hundreds place value. It's important that you memorize your place values to do the problems that we're rounding today. Okay. Our decimal point has the job of going in between the whole numbers and the decimals. Remember, decimals are fractions, and the decimal point separates the whole numbers and fractions, or in other words, the whole numbers and the decimals. Name the place value of the underlined digit. Okay, do you remember that one? That's hundredths. Any number to the right of the decimal point is a decimal. Name the place value of the underlined digit. Okay, that's in the ones. Remember that any number to the left of the decimal point is going to be a whole number. Okay. Name the place value of the underlined digit. That 6 is in the tenths. Okay. Underline the nearest whole number. So it's a little bit different. So remember that any number to the left is going to be the whole of that decimal point. Okay. So nearest means nearest to the decimal point. So the 7 is the nearest whole number. So we would underline the 7. Okay, let's look through our steps again. Round the number to the nearest hundredth. Okay, we'll put up our steps. Let's get started. So we underline. What are we going to underline? Direction says hundredth. That would be the 5. Box. The 52 in the box is in between the 50 and 60, but it rounds down to the 50. Then rules for left and right. The 47 decimal point 3 stays exactly the same. There are no digits to the right for this one, but don't forget to eliminate any extra zeros. In this case, remember, we're going to hundredths, so we're just going to get rid of anything after that. So we're going to get rid of that 0. And remember, the reasoning for that, as we get our answer here of 47 and 35 hundredths, is that the decimal fractions are equivalent, and that's why we're allowed to get rid of the zeros. This would read 47 and 352 thousandths rounded to the nearest hundredth equals 47 and 35 hundredths. Round the number to the nearest whole number. Okay? So underline. So what are we underlining? Well, it says nearest whole number. So look at your decimal point. We're going to the left, and the nearest whole number would be the 7. Remember, the nearest to the decimal point. So underline. We're going to box. So we can get that on there. So it's our 73. That 73 would be in between 70 and 80, but it rounds down to the 70, right? Rules for left and right. Pop into zeros. But remember, eliminate the extra zeros. Our underlined digit there was the 1s, right? And so we were just going to that. Everything else we can get rid of, including the decimal point, okay? So we'll see if we can get rid of those. And our answer is simply just going to be 47. We don't need the decimal point, so it's just going to be 47. And our answer is 47 and 352 thousandths rounded to the nearest whole number equals 47. All right, so that's the steps, and we have 3 problems to solve today. What is 5 and 863 thousandths rounded to the closest tenth? Let's rewrite our number so we can see it a little bit better. Our first step is to underline. We're going to tenths this time, so that would be the 8. Box. 86 is between 80 and 90, but that rounds up this time to 90. Rules for left stays the same. Right pops into zeros. Then we want to get rid of any extra zeros that are past our tenths this time. So our answer is going to be 5 and 9 tenths. And again, the rationale for the getting rid of the zeros is that they are equivalent decimals or fractions. So our answer is A. Write your answer in the box. What is 13 and 841 thousandths rounded to the closest hundredth? First step is we'll rewrite the number so we can see it. We want to underline our place value, which is the hundredths. Box. 41 is in between 40 and 50, but it rounds down to 40. Rules for left stays the same. There are no digits on the right this time, but we do want to eliminate that extra 0 because we were only going to hundredths. And so our answer is going to be 13 and 84 hundredths. And again, that's our reason that we can get rid of the zeros is that they're equivalent, and we would write the answer of 13 and 84 hundredths. One more problem. What is 23 and 491 thousandths rounded to the nearest whole number? We will rewrite. We are rounding to the nearest whole number. Remember, whole numbers are on the left of the decimal and nearest to the decimal point, that's the 3. Box. 34 is in between 30 and 40, but it rounds down to 30. Rules for left stays the same. Right pops into zeros, but we want to get rid of all of those zeros and the decimal point because we're only going to the nearest whole number. So our answer would be 23, and so the answer is D. Thanks for hanging in there. It was a little bit of a tough lesson today. You did a great job, and we hope to see you on the next one.